Yeah! Nothing gets me more pumped than this fake AC/DC. Welcome to the Deep Sports Podcast. You might know this as an offshoot of the Deep Six Podcast. I'm Matt Barnes of the Deep Six Podcast. And I just want to start by saying, thank you to anybody who gives this a chance because, I don't know, this is like a passion project for me. It's taken us a while to put it together. And if you listen to our regular show, which I really fucking hope you listen to our regular show, but if you do, me and Steve talked about this briefly last week during our regular show that, this was something we wanted to try. And it's, I don't know. I'm just really glad that you guys are here joining us for, this like sports journey that we're about to take. Steve is with me here too today. Steve's producing my show.
Yeah, well, somebody's got to do it.
Steve, you ready to talk about sports ball?
Yeah, I love sport.
That's why I brought with me my own co-host just for the Deep Sports Podcast. Here with Kyle Hahn. Kyle, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How about you, my man?
I'm just super. I mean, as super as a guy can be.
That didn't sound too convincing, sorry.
I'm as super as a guy can be that, gets a sports injury from, working with produce. Like, for Kyle, who may not know, I have a torn rotator cuff. And that's from...
We hope it's not torn.
That's the words of my physical therapist. It's gone from, I think it's torn, to I hope it's not torn. So, like everybody that's like sitting there like, oh, well, torn rotator cuff, that's a shame.
Has that been confirmed? Is Schefter going to have to look into that?
I'm going to go see Dr. Cho, which is, famous sports doctor for anybody who doesn't know. Ooh. Dr. David Cho. Shout out for my homie. So, yeah, sports ball. That's what we're doing here today, deep sports. And, rather than just, waffle back and forth over and over and over again, I figured we would just get right into it.
Sounds good to me.
So, Week 16 of NFL is where we're going into right now. And, obviously being so late into the NFL season, we're going to talk about football. How's that sound to you?
That sounds wonderful.
It would sound a lot better if you talked into your microphone.
Sorry, sir. Is this better?
Yeah.
I just get very conversational, Steve. You know this about me.
You can do like I'm doing. Take your mic off your stand.
Like a sleazy host.
Makes you feel any
just going to walk and talk with this mic. How you doing? Also mentioned at the outset, if we get distracted, we are watching D2, the Mighty Ducks. And we were talking about this a little bit before the podcast, that, what was the grand idea that went into this? That, the Ducks, being who the Ducks are in Mighty Ducks 1, they were an overrated team. They're D5. They just got some nice jerseys, but they were still shit. And then automatically USA is like, okay, Goodwill Games, we're going to make the Ducks entire Team USA.
And then face off against... I guess a country that doesn't even have its own hockey team in Trinidad.
Well, that's why they won 9-2 because they were playing Trinidad, who can't even.
They even got 2.
They can't even keep the ice frozen in Trinidad.
But then again, they are playing against Goldberg.
Like they're skating in water soup. Like it gets dirty because you got like little boys sweating into it. That's not to get too deep, but we are watching the Mighty Ducks, so this is sports themed. So nobody get on top of me on this one, especially not a little boy. Moving on.
God.
I just want to make that clear.
Moving on.
Yeah.
This is only the most professional sports podcast on the internet right now.
This is the sports podcast.
Skip Bayless would love to be here.
Skip Bayless, eat your heart out.
I think more Jerry Mariotti would wish he was here because we're talking about all that kind of like sexual assault type. We got to get out of this venue, but while we're talking about it, Jay Mariotti would love it.
Oh my God.
Moving on.
So, yes, NFL, we're back on the topic. I mean, I might get back to the Ducks, but I'm going to try to stay away from it as long as I can. Week 15 NFL wrap-up. Let's just look at what happened last week. I mean, if you're listening to this, I would assume you probably know what happened, but quick rundown. Seahawks over the Rams. Jared Goff got a concussion during the game. He may not play this week.
Oh, no. Bummer.
Yeah, I think that it's worth talking about since we're on the subject of what's going on with the Rams.
Absolutely, no.
How bad of a first-round draft pick Jared Goff was?
It's definitely... see, I don't think the problem is more so Jared Goff. I think the problem is that, the Rams ran a middle school offense throughout the entire season. But then again, what's even more surprising is how long it took Jared Goff to get on the field just to learn this middle school offense. So I think... as a number 1 draft pick, you should be starting right away, not waiting until, week 10?
Especially when Dak Prescott who was
Fourth
a
round
fourth
pick.
round pick, and Carson Wentz, who was the number 2 overall pick, right behind Jared Goff. They both played from week 1.
Well, Carson wasn't even projected to play week 1. It was going to be Sam Bradford.
Sure, and we'll talk about Sam
We'll talk
Bradford
about
in a little bit. But yeah, it's, watching Jared Goff play football, like, I kind of sympathize with Jeff Fisher. I'm like, wow, like, that's some 7-9 shit right there.
Coming from the guy who's like, we're not going to go 7-9. Yeah, you're not going to go 7-9. You're going to go worse and
Right,
worse.
and not have a job.
Deservedly
Which is
so.
just poetic justice.
Should have been fired years ago.
Dolphins over the Jets. My Miami Dolphins. 34-13 over the Jets.
Well, this is obviously up against a very finished Jets team who put all their eggs in one basket and won Ryan Fitzpatrick. Honestly, not the smartest decision in the world, because I don't know if any of you have learned from Ryan Fitzpatrick in history. One good year, the next year he's mediocre. One good year, the next year with the Texan.
Can we even call what he was this year mediocre? Because I don't even think mediocre is the right word for it. I just think,
yeah,
bottoming out. I don't know a really funny way to put that, but he's terrible.
He's terrible.
Terrible.
He's terrible. Just terrible.
But what comes out of this game, though, is that the Dolphins do control their own destiny now. So they win out. They're in the playoffs, which is miraculous considering the last time we were in the playoffs was 2010. That was the year of Chad Pennington.
And considering how they started the season, 1-4, and then goes on to start actually using their brain and playing Jay Ajayi, running him into the ground, 2 straight 200-yard games in the form of a 6-game win streak.
Still don't know how I feel about Jay Ajayi. I mean, this is, here's my take on that. I mean, as a Dolphins fan, like, I love to see that he's playing really well, but I'm still trusting a British guy playing football, and sometimes I think that he doesn't know what football he's playing, like, because they're like, oh yeah, football, you kick the ball around, right? No, it's an absolute thunder bastard. So yeah, like, I just think that some behind me, he's probably just going to forget at some point and just kick the ball.
It was a little bit
that's
of Ricky
not really your job.
It was a little bit of Ricky Gervais right there. It almost sounded the same. I'm not going to lie.
That's the extent of my. Well, no, I shouldn't say that's the extent. I'm a big Liverpool supporter, right? But that's, Jay Ajayi he's gonna clear that line, just forget what he's doing at some point. That's my fear as a fan.
That's fair.
Packers over the Bears. Nothing really to talk about there. Matt Barkley looks like an actual NFL pro.
That's okay.
As somebody, we all live in Philadelphia, and we've all seen Matt Barkley, who had no arm strength at all. And what he was known for in college was accuracy, and he had none of that here, too. But Matt Barkley actually looks like a pro playing for the Bears. Now, he hasn't played any good pass defenses.
This is true. This is very true. But this is Matt Barkley we're talking about. Noodle arm Matt Barkley, and this is honestly a little impressive. Just a little.
Throws the ball like Charles Barkley. Or did at one point. But now he looks good. So I guess that's a positive for the Bears, like something to build on. Certainly not a franchise quarterback.
You're not building around
Certainly not a franchise
Matt
quarterback.
Barkley.
But I think he's earned the opportunity to be with the team next year at least.
Okay.
So
that's fair.
I think for him that's good. Texans over the Jags. Kevin Carter, friend of the podcast, his own Jaguars, lost 21-20.
Real quick, is Kevin still a friend of the podcast? He's complained about not being on the show more times than I can count.
He's a friend of me.
He's a friend of you, who you met through me, but
but
say hello to Kevin Carter.
Yeah, Kevin Carter, shout out. We're talking about your Jags.
What's up?
Who were leading the game and controlled the rush and controlled the pass and led at halftime and still lost 21-20.
This was a matchup of two teams who ended up being perpetual disappointments from start to finish.
Let's certainly not hold back any punches there.
No, not at all. The Texans go into the start of the season signing Brock Osweiler to that ludicrous contract.
$72 million over 4 years.
And he
for
ends
a guy
up
with what, 6 starts?
6 starts, ends up getting benched as of last week.
For the Macho Man, Tom Savage.
Woo! No, that's Ric Flair.
That's Ric Flair.
But anyway.
Oh, yeah, Tom Savage.
But yeah, no, just perpetual disappointment matchup. And then you got your Jags, who basically won the offseason by spending big on defense and building around Blake Bortles with guys like Allen Hurns and Allen Robinson. And you got your dual backfield of Yeldon and Ivory. You think, that's a recipe for success. They're going to succeed.
And their offensive line has been better this year, too. So they're actually protecting well. It's just that party girl Blake Bortles can't stop going out and getting trashed every night in luxurious Jacksonville, Florida.
Where do you hear about a big money quarterback partying in all places like Jacksonville? Not Orlando, not Miami, not even Tampa.
Steve, comment?
Jacksonville.
Ain't nobody partying of note in Jacksonville.
If you've ever driven down I-95, like going from like the northeast to Florida, you drive through Jacksonville and it's like watching an old Western. Like you're driving through and there's a post office and then a building and then you're out of town already.
I've spent time in Jacksonville.
Like in prison?
Yes. It was a very dark time in my life. No, my parents had to go on job training, brought me along, so I basically sat in a hotel room in Jacksonville for
Good Lord.
for a week. But
Jacksonville's the worst.
It's not exciting. I don't know how anybody can get into trouble there because nobody really cares.
I mean, what do they got? A couple Hooters and a Chili's. Blake
And a
Bortles is going
Hardee's.
out every night to Applebee's.
And a Hardee's.
Getting smashed
And
off
a
2 for
Hardee's.
25s.
Wait, is it Hardee's or Carl's Jr. in the South?
Carl's Jr. is in
the
Florida,
South.
California.
Oh, isn't it?
Do they have them in the South too? I don't know. We're getting off topic,
Yeah.
but beautiful Jacksonville, Florida, home of the Eagles Super Bowl run, where Donovan McNabb threw up in the huddle and Terrell Owens came back from a broken leg.
I'm wearing the Eagles Super Bowl jersey right now.
Yeah, Kyle has on a B West jersey, which is somebody who hasn't played for the team in 7 years. But it's okay. That's where our pride is now.
Exactly. We should be what B West was a part of.
I'm still on board the Wentz wagon.
That's fine. That's fine. You can be. We just need a foundation back.
But getting back to the Jaguars, Gus Bradley fired and
Deservedly so.
after the game, and then they made him ride home on the team charter with the players after he got fired.
Jesus, that's cruel, man.
And all week, if you look on ESPN all week long, it was players saying how awkward they felt riding home with their coach that just got fired that they actually
not
like.
coach. They're not coach.
They're past tense coach. It's like when they talk about Tom Coughlin now. Coach.
They are talking about Tom Coughlin. They're talking about bringing him on.
Bringing him back to be the coach again. So maybe we'll have Kevin Carter on the show. Maybe next week.
Maybe we won't.
Maybe on one of our next shows, or maybe we won't. We'll see how Steve feels. But we'll have Kevin Carter on to talk about how bad the Jags are. So hopefully if he listens to this, he can give you some feedback and let me know if he'd like to be a part of Deep Sports to give some thoughts on
He's actually typing his comment right now that he does want to be a part of the show.
that, talk about his Jungle Cats.
That'd be sick. I'm interested in Jungle Cats.
Bills over the Browns, not much to talk about there. Browns are really completing their perfect run to 0-16, and they're making it look good too.
They're looking to have fans are looking to have a parade when they.
Yes, that is a story that the fans are raising money on their own. I think on a Kickstarter to have a parade for being winless.
But then there was a
Right,
there was a
man.
report out there that one of the Cleveland sports talk radio hosts not too happy about it and says if that were ever to happen, he'd run over the fans or something along that
Woody?
matter. Yeah, Woody. Maybe.
You really shouldn't put that stuff out there before you're going to do it because then it's
Maybe.
premeditated. Where you can just say it's an act of insanity. If
Ladies
you
and
just do it off
gentlemen,
the-
if you
he's a Cleveland Browns sports talk show host. What are you supposed to say?
I would think he's always close to running
support
somebody
this.
over anyway.
I'll support this 0-16 parade. Woohoo! Go Cleveland Browns.
just a side note here, we don't condone intentional acts of violence upon crowds of people.
I'm not
I
condoning
certainly
that.
my legal advice there was to not do it, but
No, you told him not to tell him
not
before
to
he
tell
did
people
it.
if you're going to do it, which is basically the same thing. So either way, I'm on the side of winning. Regardless, also a story with the Browns was what was that story I was thinking about? Have you looked on ESPN this week?
Terrell Pryor, Brian Hartline.
That's also a story. It's really weird that a team that's going to go 0-16 has so much stuff going on around the team. Like, why are we writing about a team that's 0-16? But they have so much drama surrounding the team that it just...
Joe Thomas made the Pro Bowl.
It's not even good. It's they're rotating quarterbacks back and forth. They've gone Josh McCown and Cody Kessler, and now back to Robert Griffin. who got hurt in the Eagles game, first game of the season, and now is back, and he still looks like Robert Griffin, so I don't think anything improved.
Yeah, it's just Cleveland Browns are just a big fat mess. And honestly, while they may be a mess, they actually have talent on that team.
There are a couple players that I would not mind if they didn't exit the league after this season.
Yeah.
Trying to think of a nice way to put
it. Terrell Pryor.
Yeah, but he's soft, which is what we hear.
He's soft, but he'll play like a number one at times. I think the Eagles could use at times.
He's garbage. Moving on. Ravens over the Eagles. We don't want to talk about that too long. But,
No.
The real takeaway here is that Doug Peterson just has no idea what he's doing still. You would think after, 14 games now, he would have some clue what he's doing. But no.
He doesn't.
It's not where Doug's going with it.
And I'll only give him credit for one thing. Rookie head coach looking to, I guess, trying to make a statement. And by making a statement, he's made many questionable but aggressive play calls, thus having the Eagles lead the league in fourth down conversions. He's made a lot of questionable fourth down call decisions, some of which have worked and some of which are baffling, like the swing pass to Nelson Aguilar.
If I saw one more jet sweep in that game, I was going to put my fist through the screen. You're running a jet sweep on short yardage situations, and you don't have one receiver that I would trust to run the jet sweep because they're all too slow to run the jet sweep.
Or they can't catch the football.
Well, we're going to have to dive way too deep into the deep tracks of what's wrong with the Eagles to really get to that point. But, I don't think we have enough time for that today.
We must go on.
But, we got to keep trudging along because we do have Titans over the Chiefs. Nothing really want to talk about there. Titans are closing in on the division, though. Giants over the Lions. Giants might actually be the best team in the NFC East.
They're up there. I wouldn't say they're the best in the NFC East.
Best combo of offense and defense in the division.
Okay, no, I will agree with that one. But overall, I can't say that they are the definitive best. I can't.
It's a question that'll be answered before the end of the season.
That should be a poll question.
But they certainly have.
Poll question that should go up. That should go up on Facebook. Who's the best team in the NFC East? Giants, Cowboys, and not the Redskins.
Even for our small little show, it'll still be dominated by Cowboys fans that just get offended that even a small little show would post such a question.
All of the 5 people that will hear this.
We'll see. I'm a little bit more ambitious than that, but never know. But that'll still be dominated by the Cowboys.
But I do agree.
How could you say the Cowboys aren't the best team? We got Dak Prescott, we got Ezekiel Elliott, Des Bryant.
The big wall.
Show me some of your players that aren't rookies or, are, like Mr. Glass from Unbreakable that are hurt all the time. Yeah.
Jerry Jones
calling you out,
Mr.
Cowboys
Glass,
fans.
Jerry Jones wants Mr. Glass to start,
Good Lord.
Anyway, moving on.
Colts over the Vikings. LOL, Sam Bradford. I'm just going to read that as I wrote it because it says really all that it needs to say. I think that Sam Bradford would have been a wise decision for the Eagles to go with this season, even though I think he's a garbage quarterback. But I just never in my wildest dreams could I have imagined that a first-round pick for Sam Bradford would happen, A, and 2, that the pick might almost be as good as the pick we gave up to get Carson Wentz.
Exactly. And it kind of just in turn makes that whole Carson Wentz trade kind of like minimal loss. It's because
it feels better now.
Not only did we recoup the first rounder that we got back,
and it might be just as
but
good
we
of a
only
pick.
gave up. Yeah, it might be just as good. And number 2, it ended up, if you calculate it all, we only gave up 1 second-round pick for Carson Wentz. Because we're going to lose it next year. That's it.
And we're not talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers defense of the 70s or, the 85 Bears.
Yeah.
We're talking about the Indianapolis Colts, and they got blown out 34-6, and Adrian Peterson played.
Didn't play well.
Didn't play well, but he didn't play well even before he got hurt this year.
This is very true.
And we're talking about a running back in his 30s at this point.
I guess let me ask you this: do you think this is the end of the road for AP, or do you
get
think
one more year, even if it's not in Minnesota?
Do you think he'll play well in that 1 year, or do you think he won't even rush for?
Depends on where it is. I think team with a good offensive line could still end up being 1,000-yard.
You're talking about the Dallas Cowboys, aren't you?
Well, that wouldn't make any sense.
It wouldn't make any sense.
Ezekiel Elliott, bro.
But that's like that's the team.
Zeke the Freak.
That's the team with an offensive line, though.
I can't think of anybody else off the top of my head, but there's going to be teams that want running backs. I mean, think about the Colts. I mean, they're still starting Frank Gore with.
And he's actually playing well.
Literally, the tread is falling off the tires at this point.
Even with the tread falling off the tires, he's still putting up yards.
The last couple weeks, it has not been a good year for him.
It's fair, I
But
guess.
Steelers over the Bengals. Bengals missed the playoffs for the first time since 2009. Saints over the Cardinals. Why are the Cardinals so bad? It's a question we don't have enough time to answer today, but that was really my takeaway from the game. Why are they so bad? Playoff team a year ago, didn't they win, 12 games last year?
Yeah.
And now this year, they went on that 4 games to start the year win. Then they, lost 8 in a row before beating the Dolphins, and now they're losing again.
And it's with most of the same guys, too. Now, mind you, a little bit of their defense got hurt. By a little bit, I mean just the Honey Badger.
Same guys, same coach. They added Chandler Jones, and
they
they're
added
worse.
Chandler Jones. Yeah, I just that's something I just don't understand.
Injuries are a big part of it for sure, but they got blown out by. Well, it wasn't exactly a blowout, but they were ahead at one point in the Saints game.
Maybe it's just regression. Maybe Carson Palmer's finally getting old.
And there's no other answer at quarterback. So let's see what they do at the draft next year, but no other answer in-house right now. Falcons over the 49ers. LOL Chip Kelly. Patriots over Broncos. Patriots, best team in the league. I don't even think it's arguable at this point. I mean, it wasn't a beautiful win. They only won, 16-3. But at no point in that game did the Broncos ever look like they were going to be even close to winning the game.
Not at all.
And they do have arguably the best defense in the league right now. And at no point did they look like they were close to winning that game. And a big part of it, Trevor Siemian, it's not a pro quarterback. But the Patriots aren't exactly fielding, a great defense of their own either. You should be able to move the ball on them, and they didn't even move the ball at all.
And that's the thing. I think within this offseason, they gave up 2 of their best defensive pieces in Chandler Jones and in season with Jamie Collins, yet they're still playing elite football on the defensive side.
Biggest proof that scheme always wins out over personnel, and
please,
Bill Belichick's always been that way. So a good scheme can definitely win you.
Where else have I heard that before? Lol Chip Kelly.
Moving on, before I get too depressed thinking about that. Raiders over the Chargers. Chargers lose another game at the end. I mean, how many games have they lost by 7 or less points this year? But this one clinched the playoff spot for the Raiders. And going into the final weeks, they do have the lead for the division crown now.
Much deserved for the Raiders.
Now, I'm thinking back. I think this is their first playoff appearance since 200002.
Yes, it is.
Which was their Super Bowl season with Rich Gannon.
When they got hit with the tuck rule. the infamous tuck rule, which was a fumble.
Cowboys over the Bucks. Cowboys maybe for real, maybe not for real. I don't really know. They did just play the Bucks, so I'm not really sure. They certainly look human against the Giants.
I say they're for real because leading up to that game, the Bucks were surging. I think they won 4 in a row.
Yeah.
Leading up to that game,
and they look like they were going to compete for the division because the Falcons aren't exactly the strongest team.
Exactly,
either.
And I feel like either them or the Giants are certainly a team that the Cowboys wouldn't want to run into because I think the Bucks would definitely want to look for a rematch there. But the Giants are the only team that the Cowboys have lost to. They're basically 11 Giants.
And we know what happens when the Giants go into the playoffs with the wild card.
They go to the Super Bowl and win it.
So, I mean, they have the best quarterback in the division. Their defense looks really good. And they went out and bought a defense, and it actually worked, which is, I think, the first time ever in NFL history that you went out and bought a team, and it worked.
Eagles did that twice, and look what happened.
It didn't work either time. Dream Team, rest in peace.
Dream Team 2, rest in peace.
Panthers over the Redskins was the Monday night game this week. I don't know if there's really anything to talk about in that game. You've got Cam Newton and Jay Gruden and Ron Rivera and
Josh Norman.
It's just, there's literally not one player that played in that game that I would pay to have on my team. And they might be 2 of the worst head coaches with overrated records in the league.
Yeah.
Ron Rivera saved his job by literally doing the Doug Peterson and gambling every single play of the game. And it worked, and it saved his job. But this season is the result of how bad of a coach he is. Especially when they sold their best defensive player off. They just released Josh Norman outright.
I mean...
And their pass defense has been atrocious this year.
Of course, but overmodulating there. But I guess they can kind of take solace into the fact that they won against this player that they sold to the Redskins. I think that's also a determining factor in him saving his job. He's like, okay, we can win without Josh Norman. There you go. Not only did you win without Josh Norman, but you won against Josh Norman. So,
well, that's bragging rights at least, but I don't know if it's going to give you a lot to be happy about when you're picking in the top 10 in the draft next year, because your team is terrible.
yes.
It's garbage. Carolina, own up. So, playoff teams right now, after this week: Patriots, Raiders, Steelers, Texans, Chiefs, and Dolphins in the AFC. NFC: Cowboys, Seahawks, Falcons, Lions, Giants, Packers. Honestly, looking at those teams, I really don't see any of that changing, to be honest with you. I think maybe placement might change, like with the Packers and the Lions, but I don't foresee those teams changing at all at this point. Those do look like, this year at least. I mean, Texans might change. Titans might end up winning that division. They do play, I think, week 17. So that may change. But other than that, I don't see any of this changing. I think the Texans are making the quarterback change at the right time. Tom Savage will light them up a little bit, the Macho Man, and save their season.
See, while that might be so, there's just a part of me that feels like I don't think the Texans even deserve to be in the playoffs.
Do they deserve it? No. But
After making the big splash,
I think
for
for
their quarterback,
the Titans have gone too far this year, like much further than was anticipated.
well, it's because they have a great running
They have
game, and
two
they got
great running
Rashard,
backs.
and they have Rashard Matthews exploding at the right time.
Well, they drafted Taylor Decker with that trade back with the Browns.
yeah,
And he's played at a Pro Bowl level as a rookie. And, they have who on the other side? Lewin.
Taylor Lewan, yeah,
And their offensive line is just really good.
yeah.
And it gives Mariota the time to make passes when he needs to.
And
His receivers are playing well.
And he's
So-
got a two-headed monster in a running game in former Eagle.
I think they're
DeMarco Murray.
overachieving a little bit. I think in a game where, we're
And Derrick
not
Henry.
talking about Bill O'Brien like he's a genius at head coach either, but I think that they're going to lose that game,
Probably.
and that'll seal the division for the Texans. So I think those are really that might be the only spot that really could change. If the Cowboys win this week, they clinch the division, so the Giants would be out at that point. So the Giants do need to win tonight. We're recording on Thursday. The Eagles and Giants play this evening. But otherwise, I don't see the playoff teams changing too much.
Fair enough.
Going into Week 16, Giants, Eagles tonight, Dolphins, Bills, Jets, Pats, Titans, Jags, Vikings, Packers. A lot of division games this week. Chargers, Browns, not a division game, but who can fail best in that game? I think that's a story worth looking at.
Do you think the Browns will win?
Nope.
I've had my
It is a home
I've had
game.
my boy Mike, who's also a Dolphins fan like you. He has the Browns finally winning this one.
I think that if they're going to win a game, this is their best chance at the end of the year because they're playing a team that's known for collapsing. They have probably a lame duck head coach. Mike McCoy is going to get fired. And it's a West Coast team traveling 3 time zones to play them at home. So we'll see. And we'll see if that game even makes TV, because last week Browns fans were calling their affiliate and asking for the game not to be played. They would rather see the Pittsburgh-Cincinnati game over their home team playing, which says a lot about the state of football when you
Wow.
call your affiliate and ask for your rival's game to be played instead.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, I could honestly see them not. And that Cleveland sports talk show host would be quite happy if they won that game, because then he wouldn't see that parade happen.
We'll
He
see.
wouldn't-
I'm
he
still
wouldn't go
on
through
the
with his
booster of
threat.
the parade thing. I'm really pushing for the parade.
Anyway, where were we?
Redskins, Bears, Falcons, Panthers, Colts, Raiders, which is an interesting matchup. Bucks at Saints, Cards at Seahawks, 49ers at Rams. Jared Goff maybe not playing. They've elevated Sean Mannion to number 2 on the depth chart. Case Keenum won't even be dressed for the game unless Goff can't play. So that could be interesting just from the standpoint of 2 terrible teams playing each other with 2 quarterbacks who shouldn't even be playing in the NFL.
Agree.
Is your argument that Kaepernick should be playing?
I think Kaepernick should be playing.
Stop.
Why? Tell me.
terrible.
Explain.
His completion percentage for the season is like 54%. You would think all that time he spent on the bench the last year or so would actually result in him being a better
look at
player.
what offense he's playing in. He's playing in Chip Kelly's
That's
gimmicky
Chip
college
Kelly, man.
offense. I think it's
Scheme
Chip
over
Kelly.
players.
See what I mean? Lol, Chip Kelly.
And this is the quarterback that he wanted, somebody who can run and gun, but still no accuracy.
If Jim Harbaugh were still here, I think Kaepernick's stats would be completely different.
He still wouldn't be a 60% passer.
He would be at least a 60% passer.
No, stop.
At 60.
That's not real.
He was before.
Bengals at Texans. Ravens at Steelers and Broncos at Chiefs are both Christmas Day games. And the Lions at the Cowboys is the Monday night game. So we're not going to delve too much further into that stuff today. But those are the games you can watch this week. Some interesting storylines playing out, a lot of division games. So playoff standings could change a little bit this week. But it really looks like, the teams are kind of set. And the teams at the back end control their own destiny. Mm-hmm. The Packers, if they win out, are making it. The Dolphins, if they win out, are making it. And so it should be really interesting to see if either one of those teams lose and kind of weasel their way backwards out of the playoffs. Mm-hmm. But certainly willing to see how that works out. So, in your mind, NFL awards so far. I mean, granted, we have 2 weeks left. MVP.
Tom Brady was suspended 4 games. But I honestly can't not pick him. I think the next closest to me would be Ezekiel Elliott. But that's about it.
My gut call on that was Tom Brady at first. But when I think about how far the Raiders have come and how good their offense is, I don't see how you can not go Derek Carr.
You can certainly make the argument for him because he's honestly he has honestly led the Raiders on so many comebacks this year. It's definitely brought them to where they are now. So you can make a case for Derek Carr, but I just don't think Derek Carr is going to win it this year because coming down the stretch, he's had some hiccups here and there, and I think that might play a role in
might affect what voters of the award do.
Yes,
I think in general he's still. Even if he doesn't win the award, he has been the MVP for his team this year.
Correct.
Because if you really look at the options of who they could start instead of him, if he was hurt, Connor Cook is their number 2. Mm-hmm. And behind him is Matt McGloin. So if you don't have Derek Carr, that Raiders team, what are they, 11-2 right now? 12-2? Mm-hmm. Maybe 3? Something in that neighborhood. Yeah. You could probably reverse the record, and that's what they would be. They might be a 2 or 3 win team without Derek Carr on the team. Because their defense gets the doors blown off every single week. And their offense manages to outscore everybody, and that's how they win.
Did you know Reggie Nelson got into the Pro Bowl? Their safety, Raiders safety, got in the Pro Bowl. Pretty amazing.
It's a popularity contest. The players don't even want to play in the Pro Bowl. They don't even see the point of it. Especially, I forget who it was this week that said, now that the Pro Bowl is in Orlando, it doesn't matter at all. Literally something that was said.
Wait, the Pro Bowl's in Orlando now?
They moved it from Hawaii to Orlando.
Wasn't the whole point of it being in Hawaii before?
Because that's how you get people to go. Because it's in Hawaii. It's a free vacation. And they get the bonus money for making the Pro Bowl. Now people don't even want to play in the Pro Bowl because it's in fucking Orlando.
And who the fuck wants to be there?
That shit stadium that's just falling apart.
Well, it's not falling apart. They rebuilt it.
It's still crap.
Is it?
And to get to it, if you're driving from Orlando proper, from downtown, to get to the bowl, you have to drive through fucking Mogadishu to get there. And that's not like a racial thing. It's literally the buildings are falling apart.
You're not wrong.
It looks like Haiti after the flood.
Oh, boy.
Moving on. Once
so
again.
Bad. Rookie of the year.
Offensive Rookie of the Year. It's not really a question. It's Ezekiel
Elliott.
I mean, I hate the guy, but he is the Rookie of the Year.
And you know who's probably going to get second
His
place?
only competition is Dak Prescott.
Dak Prescott.
Because they both play for the Cowboys, and the Cowboys are winning games. So that's the competition. And it's going to be Ezekiel Elliott, because he has, almost 1,400 yards rushing for the season?
Right.
So that's unheard of for a rookie running back.
Since Dickerson.
Yeah. So
Is there an off chance that they would be co-rookie of the year?
No.
Just a complete off chance.
Dak Prescott's not very good.
But he's not bad.
They're calling an offense suited to what he does that will not have him ever throw an interception, which is why he only has 3 for the year. Because they never call any plays that have any risk beyond 15 yards.
And they have people who can catch the football.
Sure, they have Des Bryant and Terrence Williams.
And Jason Witten.
So
and Cole Beasley.
They could be running pass plays that are beyond 15 yards, but they don't. Whereas if you put Tony Romo in there, he would have like 12 interceptions at this point because they have him winging the ball all over the field when he's passing it. So don't get sucked into the Dak hype too much where we think that he's better than he is.
But
he was still a 4th round pick for a reason. Character concerns, and he's just not that great.
But he's not that horrible either. And he's one of the reasons why they're 11 Giants.
He's your classic game manager where he's not going to make any mistakes. And he's not really going to wow you either.
But if you put in Tony Romo, he's going to wow you, but he's going to be an accident waiting to happen, which is why I don't understand don't understand any of these Tony Romo bandwagoners why they want him back in so bad, because every time he's gotten you to the point of where you think you're going to make the promised land, go to the Super Bowl, he just disappoints you at the worst possible time.
I mean, personally speaking, I can't wait till the Cowboys lose this year because they're so overrated. And then Tony Romo goes to like Denver and wins the Super Bowl next season.
And I'd be totally okay with that.
And that's going to happen because
That's
Tony
fine.
Romo is still a good quarterback. And don't disillusion yourself to thinking that Tony Romo's not the best quarterback on his team either, because he is. He's just not playing right now.
I don't disagree with that.
And that's not even directed at you. That's more directed at the Cowboys fans.
I totally agree with this. It's just you can't when you reinsert him, you can't ruin a good thing. Right now, Dak and Zeke have a good thing going. You can't ruin that.
Defensive Rookie of the Year. Do you have anybody that springs to mind? Has
No.
not been a strong year for defensive players.
Not at all.
I mean, my immediate thought when I brought this up for today was Joey Bosa, because when he has played this year, he's been dominant. And they haven't played him on the defensive line like everybody thought they would. They played him as a linebacker. So it's been different and an adjustment for him playing a new position, but he still has looked good when he's on the field.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is that he hasn't really been on the field all that much because he's been hurt, and then he had the holdout to begin the season.
Yeah.
So he really hasn't been on the field very much.
It's very slim pickings. That's for sure.
When you look at your top defensive players that were taken, like Vernon Hargreaves, hasn't really played. Hasn't played well when he has played.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe the only other argument against Bosa maybe is Jalen Ramsey.
He hasn't played well either.
He's been very dominant for that Jaguars defense, though. Nobody's throwing at him.
I guess.
That's the enthusiasm we have for the defensive rookie class, that there's, I guess he's okay.
I guess he's okay.
I certainly don't think the Jaguars would change their mind and take somebody different because he's been
No.
that good.
No, I honestly had
It's hard sometimes to measure.
I had the Cowboys taking him.
Right, which made sense.
Yeah.
It's hard sometimes, I think, to measure the play of a cornerback because if nobody throws your way, then your stats don't look great. But you're still dominating the game in such a way that nobody ever throws your direction.
I mean, the stats didn't really pop out in Florida State either. It's just no one threw his way. So I guess he's just doing what he was supposed to do.
He makes plays when the ball comes his direction.
Yeah.
When it doesn't, he doesn't have to do anything because he's locking the game down so tight. Mm-hmm. But I would say that those are probably my final two for that award.
Probably it'll probably be a split
It's done
decision.
by AFC and NFC, so we're just going generalizations here,
Right.
who the best rookies are on each side. But there will be one for the AFC, one for the NFC. But those would be my picks, at least in the AFC. Super Bowl prediction. Based on what we know today, going into Week 16.
I've kind of had that fluctuate as the weeks have gone on. Like halfway through the season, I totally had the Broncos going back to the Super Bowl for some godforsaken reason. But you know what? I really think it's really tough for me to say because I like the Patriots to go back, but I really like this Chiefs team. I think
a
lot.
Who do you think they're going to play? Before I interject myself, who do you think they're going to play and who do you think's winning?
When the AFC?
You think the Chiefs are going to win the AFC?
And then in
Who's
the
going
NFC,
from the NFC?
It's really tough. I think it's going to be the Seahawks again.
It's not necessarily a bad pick.
No.
Who would you have winning that game?
It really awfully depends. If they're back on the 1 yard line again and the Seahawks are on
I think
offense,
they've learned
I
their
think
lesson.
they're going to run the ball again. But then
Yeah.
again, you heard Russell Wilson come out yesterday and say, "Oh, if I were back at the 1 yard line again in that situation, I'd throw it again."
Well, that's stuff he has to say because
Well, he has to
he's
say,
a
'cause
great,
he's not gonna-
leader.
he's not gonna
He's
throw
not
anyone
gonna
under the
throw
bus.
anybody under the bus.
I think personally, yeah, he believes. Yeah,
Personally,
he should run the ball.
he's going to say, "Are you sure that's a good idea if they call that kind of play call again?"
Yeah, but no, I think it could be. It could go either way. It could. I think it's a definite. I think the Seahawks are going to make it to the Super Bowl, but it could go either way between Seahawks, Patriots, Seahawks, Chiefs.
As of today, right now, I'm going to say we're getting round 3, Patriots Giants again.
Ooh,
I think those are the two best teams in their
Wow.
conferences, and I'd be very shocked if both of them didn't make it.
I mean, it's not
You got to
like
think about it. The Patriots are going to have to play 2 games, and the teams they're going to have to play are soft. So I think the only thing that stops the Patriots at this point, looking at who's in, probably the Steelers. But if they don't even have to play the Steelers, then that's not a worry. I think
Okay.
the Patriots just breeze through. I think Derek Carr and the Raiders are really good. I don't think they're good enough to beat the Patriots.
But
I think they probably get their doors blown in that game.
But what if somehow, some way, the Giants have to go up against a team like a Green Bay if they make it in?
I think the Giants are a better team.
You think so?
Green Bay's not very good this year. Aaron Rodgers hasn't played very well.
He's been
Mike
playing
McCarthy
well.
is a terrible coach.
I think as soon as Green Bay faced us, they started playing well again because then they unleashed Devontae Adams, who's been a fantasy darling.
Well, it's the Eagles. Come on. Let's be fair.
All right.
So, yeah, I mean, those are our Super Bowl predictions. So we'll measure up again as we move along with the Deep Sports podcast and see who was right, who was wrong. I feel pretty good right now because Kyle picked an Andy Reid coach team. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
But the thing is, this Andy Reid coach team actually has a good coaching staff. I mean, the last Andy Reid coach team, we had Juan Castillo as our defensive coordinator.
Up until this season, his offensive coordinator was Doug Peterson.
Yeah, but we all know he ain't calling the plays.
He's calling the plays here, and we all know it by watching.
Well, he
the
is
game.
now, but I mean, he wasn't calling the plays in Kansas City.
So, I think when we go into our next show, we'll see where we stand at that point. By then, playoff teams will probably be decided or will be about to be decided because week 16's this week, 17's next week. So, we'll be in the first week of the playoffs when we record our next show. So, we'll see where we're at then. But I think the season will be much clearer at that point, and we'll see.
Yes.
We can go back and see what some of our predictions were. So, I'll have to re-listen to what we just said and write some of that stuff down just so that I can go back and do told you so's about it, or that I look like an asshole.
No,
so whichever way it goes,
perfectly fine. I'll eat crow. I won't make up excuses like Skip Bayless would.
Wow, more shots at Skip Bayless.
Dude,
today.
I hate him.
It's such an easy target, though. You're better than that.
As an Eagles fan, you have to hate him.
I guess that's a good point. NHL talk. Let's talk some NHL.
Please.
Because living in Philadelphia, it's fun to talk about the NHL right now. Flyers,
If
probably one of the 2 or 3 hottest teams in the league, right up there with Columbus. And I double-checked
Columbus of all teams.
Columbus is 10-0 in their last 10 games.
And that's remarkable.
And I think their winning streak is actually longer than that. But that's just their last 10. They're unbeaten.
No, it's really remarkable considering who's their coach. John Tortorella, Torts, guy, the team killer.
Well, that's a problem, especially because there's so many rookies on that team now. But they have high-level rookies like Zach Werenski. So, I mean...
Puljujärvi.
Right.
Yeah.
So, they're a decent team. It's just... It doesn't seem like when you look at it on paper that it should work.
And I kind of go back to...
And they have no number one scoring option really either.
And
because they traded away Ryan Johansson to get Seth Jones.
That's exactly what I was
So they don't
going
really
to
have a
go
number
back
one
to.
scoring option either. So everything's kind of spread around the board.
You look back at that trade and you kind of think to yourself, all right, well, now they can't score anymore. Now they're going to have to lean on Mr. Injury-prone Nick Foligno to lead them in their scoring. But, they've gotten it from everywhere because now they have...
Well, there's more
rookies.
balance to the team now.
Now they've got balance on defense and offense, and they got rookies who are making a great impact for that team. And now you've got Surrogate. Now you got one of our former goalies who we could have
who we thought was bad when he was here.
Thought was bad ends up being a Vezina winning goalie and ends up playing really well for Columbus.
Yeah,
and
the Russian menace.
Now they're looking great.
Sergei Bobrovsky,
Bob,
who when I think I looked at goalie stats today was top 5 in every category.
Right now?
He's just that good.
Right now, yes, absolutely.
I mean, he was behind like Devin Dubnyk
Ooh.
of the Wild, who are also 8-1-1 in their last 10. Mm-hmm. And the Flyers are 8-1-1 in their last 10. So, I mean, they're amongst the 3 hottest teams in the league, so it's fun talking about hockey right now.
Absolutely.
I think one of the reasons why the core element you see amongst those 3 teams is that there's good leadership and there's no number one scoring option. Like, everybody has to pitch in to make it work.
And you're talking about Columbus and Philly or Columbus and the Wild?
Columbus, Philly, and the Wild.
Okay. You can make an argument for Wayne. You can make an argument for Wayne Train. He's been scoring goals out the wazoo lately.
Sure. Well, the one thing
You
about
can say
Wayne
there's a
Simmons
1A,
is
1B,
that
and 1C because Jake Voracek, Claude Giroux, and Wayne have kind of like been on a hot streak throughout that whole 10-game winning streak, 8-1-1, whatever you want to call it. They've been scoring on all cylinders.
Wayne Simmons is a very streaky player, though. So he'll
I
have
don't think
this
I've ever
goal-scoring
seen
streak.
him. I don't think I've ever seen him this streaky. He's
He's
already
never
got
been this
16
hot before
goals.
because he's not this type of player.
Yeah.
He's playing above what he normally does. But I think you need to because their number one player, I mean, arguably, is Claude Giroux. who's making, 8.25 million a year, and he does not score 90 points a season. So you need to compensate from somewhere when you're overpaying one player so much money.
Right.
That you need to compensate for that somewhere. And Wayne Simmons and Braden Shen, guys like that, have done a really good job of picking up the scoring pace. So I think that's helped a lot. But that's really a common thread between those three teams, is that really everybody has to pitch in and do something, or the team will sink.
You're getting a lot, and you're also getting a lot of good contributions from your secondary scorers. Guys like Raffle, Matt Reed, who we haven't seen in forever, has decided to start playing again. He's been scoring a little bit here and there.
Matt Reed, who probably won't even be with the team next season because he'll be exposed in the expansion draft.
I'd only be a little sad, but not very sad.
I wouldn't be sad at all, especially get rid of that contract. He's making like $3.5 million a year to be terrible.
I mean, but he's not being. If you could say
this
now,
season
he's playing
he's not
up to
terrible.
that contract.
But
right
I don't
now.
I don't want to think of an aberration as what he actually is now, because he's had so many bad seasons in a row that now it looks like an aberration for him to be this good.
And I absolutely agree with that. But also, I think another proponent of our winning streak is that we're getting big contributions from our young guys. Now, Konechny's been a little cold lately, but he's been contributing in other areas. And Provorov, he's now finally coming into his own. Like he's one of the better skaters on our team. He's been really good with the puck and without the puck.
There was a period there
on the power
where he
play.
got really exposed, where he was getting beaten
in the early
very easily
going.
by easy moves. And he's really gotten better since then. I think it was just getting used to the speed of the league, that it's so much different than the WHL. He's taken a while to adapt, but he's turned out to be as good as everybody thought he would be. Now, once he gets involved with scoring like he's used to, where he's a point-a-game player in the WHL, that if he can pick up that, then we're in really good shape. I mean, the goaltending situation's still rough, but it's always going to be rough in Philadelphia.
And
perpetually,
here's
we've been
where
awful
I
at
get
goaltender.
to that. I honestly don't think that we're going to be in that situation much longer. Now, I'm just going to say this.
Are you thinking Carter Hart's going to be the franchise goalie?
Yes, that's
I think
exactly
that's
what I'm
overrating him a
thinking.
little bit, but I think Hextall did that too. So
Right. See, he's been playing quite well in the league he's in right now. I mean, he's supposed to. Just considering where he was drafted, considering how he's done in previous years, he's supposed to play well in that league.
fact check me.
But
I'll have to fact check myself later. I think he plays in the WHL too. I think he plays for
no.
Everett.
I think it's I thought it was OHL.
Ontario.
Yeah.
I have to check that. I'm pretty sure he plays for Everett, the Silvertips. I'll check that later.
Okay.
We'll know for next time.
But
It's
honestly,
a high scoring league if he plays in the OHL.
But honestly, let me ask you, in your opinion, do you think Steve Mason is the goalie this year and next year, and
No.
maybe for a couple years beyond that?
I think Mason's
based on
going to
how
get
he's
exposed.
been playing right now.
I think Mason's going to be exposed for the expansion draft. I think they want to get rid of him. I think they're perfectly okay sticking with Stolars and Michael Neuwirth.
See, I need to see more.
Stolars is going to be exposed.
I need
too,
to see
but
more. Is Stolars playing tonight? Do you know that?
I don't know. I'd have to look.
Because I need to see. In the times I've seen him play, he's looked good, but I need to see more from him. And honestly, I don't want to see any more of Michael Neuwirth.
I don't want to see any more of either of their top two goalies, but I think that's a situation we're stuck in financially, that we have to watch them for maybe this year and next year, and then we'll start to see something different.
I think Neuwirth might be taken from us in that expansion.
It depends.
That's kind of
you
what
only take
I
one
want.
player from each team. So if they expose a forward, that might be better. And the Vegas team has to spend a certain amount of money. I think it's like 80% of the salary floor they have to spend for next year. So they have to take some big contracts. So you're going to see guys like Dustin Brown get taken that should never be taken in an expansion draft. But he might be, because he has some leadership ability, and he makes like $6 million a season. So guys like that are going to be taken because they have to be to make the salary work. So you can't just take a bunch of good youngsters and make up your team that way. If you're Vegas, you have to spend some money too. So I mean, Reed might be a more appealing option from the Flyers when they have to take one player, because he makes so much money, which is kind of reverse logic thinking there. But it might work out that way unless Mason gets exposed. If Mason's exposed, that's like $4 million. So that's a salary.
I never really saw his contract. I don't know how much he's making.
$4.25
Really?
million, something like that
Okay.
a year. So he's
right.
overpaid. So he's one of those guys that can make there. But it really is a young person's league. I mean, when I was looking at some things today, Patrick Laine. I mean, I knew this anyway, but Patrick Laine has 18 goals already. And the own goal he scored in his own net last week. So that's something that everybody does at one point or another in the NHL. It's just, his happened in magnificent fashion where he literally kind of directly shot into his own net.
I saw leading up to that draft, I knew Laine was going to be like the next coming of the. He's going to be finished.
And Austin Matthews,
finished Flash 2.0.
Austin Matthews hasn't been that bad either. He's just he doesn't look as dynamic when you watch him play.
Well, after that 4-goal game, he kind of fizzled.
Sure. Well, that's, you make your big intro and you score 4 goals. Everybody's going to expect more. But since then, he's been very slow. But he doesn't look as dynamic when he's on the ice as Patrick Laine does. Like, there's not as much electricity surrounding him.
Well, I feel like that was kind of the consensus going into that draft. Austin Matthews was the best overall player that you would build your team around with. But
sure. And he's a center, too, so that helps.
He's the center, but then you've got the finesse and you've got the scoring ability of a guy like Patrick Laine, who to me is, like I said earlier, is the next coming of Teemu Selanne.
Yeah, I don't know if I can necessarily argue that at all.
Yeah.
And let's not forget, Connor McDavid leads the league in scoring right now. As a 19-year-old, named captain of his team, and he leads the league in scoring.
That was going to be a foregone conclusion no matter what, because even before he was eligible to be drafted, he was considered to be like the next great one.
Yeah, and he's been every bit as what was delivered.
Every
Sidney
bit
Crosby's
as
having a good
advertised.
year, too, but he's being outscored by McDavid. I mean, Crosby has 22 goals, I think, already.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's not like the good players in the league already have gotten worse. They haven't. He's just that good.
He's just as advertised.
Yeah, and he plays with some good players, so, I mean, you can't discount that either, because, I mean, they still have Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Leon Draisaitl. And Jordan Eberle. I mean, there's a million players you can name on Edmonton because they've had the number 1 pick so many times that they've built quite an array of talent.
Two of those 4,
and Nail Yakupov.
Two of those four number 1 overall picks are already gone.
Right.
Yakupov,
Yeah.
Taylor Hall, Yakupov, St. Louis, Taylor Hall, New Jersey. Taylor Hall is working out a little bit in New Jersey.
New Jersey is on an 8-game losing streak.
But they're still losing, and Yakupov is still doing nothing.
So it's definitely turning into a young person's league. I mean, the speed of the game kind of dictates that, but the young players are playing at such a level that it's really forcing the hand to make teams want to invest in young players, which is why when you get a chance at a guy like a Connor McDavid, it's a slam dunk. You take it, which there was no real consensus number 1 this year. I guess Austin Matthews was who everybody thought would go number 1.
Yeah.
But Patrick Laine is just as good, if not better. I mean, as far as a scorer goes, he's better. Is he going to be a team captain? No, I don't think he really has the leadership there. But I think that Austin Matthews is probably that complete package, but Laine is probably a better player.
You honestly couldn't go wrong.
No, I don't think you can either. And I mean, even think the pick number 3 was good too, because you got Paul Harvey at 3.
Yeah.
Which in a normal year, he'd probably be the number 1 pick. So there's just such a good array of talent right now in the NHL that it's just really fun to watch, especially when, the local team, the Flyers, are so good. So
honestly, going into that season, we didn't really see that coming because we had guys who were playing in the AHL, like who we sent down because of bad contracts, like Andrew. You know what? That reminds me. They would probably take Andrew McDonald off our hands. Las Vegas.
Possible. That salary
that's the worst contract.
That
we have
salary
on our
is so buried right now, though, that he might retire with that contract.
Maybe. But now we have guys like Andrew McDonald actually contributing for us, who is coming from the AHL after a bad contract. We got guys like
surprising things happen every day. Miracles.
Yeah, exactly. And some of our third liner guys, Chris Vandevelde, Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, it's just all working out. It's all coming into place. We didn't really see this coming.
They have really good coaching too. I mean, Dave Haxtell was underrated when they signed him as the coach coming out of North Dakota, but he's turned out to be really good as far as managing talent. Well, he just does really well with that.
And that's the surprising part, because he came from a college program. He managed just young guys for a good portion of 11 years or so. It was really going to be interesting to see how he'd be able to deal with.
And it's not like he came from a small college program either.
It was a consistent
North Dakota
winner.
puts out very good talent. I mean, Jonathan Toews is from North Dakota. He played there. Drake Caggiula, who signed this year with Edmonton, and Brock Boeser, who's in the Canucks system. So they do have some good talent at North Dakota.
Fun fact: since Dave Haxtell left, I think they've won the last NCAA championship.
I'm pretty sure they did. Yeah.
Yeah, they won since he left. They've been doing even better.
Yeah. So it just goes to show that it's
it's
you're
a good
dealing
program.
we're dealing with youth. But he did come from a good program, and he had a good program installed to the point where when he leaves, things are still going that way.
And I was just curious to see how he'd be able to deal with players who have been in the league, players with personalities.
Yeah.
And
it's been different. It's a good situation for him, too, where
Yeah.
the Flyers don't really have any of those big personalities. It's just really just keeping people in line.
And that's the thing about, we have a captain. We got Claude Giroux, but he's not a personality. He's kind of laid back.
Yeah. So I thought briefly we would talk about before we close the show out the MLB off season right now. We're in the hot stove season. Reliever contracts are absolutely out of control right now. That's really my big takeaway. I mean, Yoenis Cespedes got $110 million from the Mets, so that's a little outrageous too, especially for a guy who I'm not even sure is a great player. He's just a good player. But you have relievers making, Aroldis Chapman, $86 million over five seasons.
It's the Yankees, though. It's the Yankees. They'll
It's
spend
still
big on
outrageous
everything.
to spend on a guy who might play in a season, might play a closer 50 games, 60 games, and you're paying him over $20 million.
True.
Sorry, almost $20 million a season.
True, but this particular closer throws 105 miles an hour.
He does,
And
but I
he'll
think if
get
anything,
people out
I think
with
if anything
that
that
gas.
Joe Madden showed us through the playoffs is that you can wear his arm down.
Well, yeah, it's because they
by
played
Game
him
7 in the World Series.
because they played him 2-3 innings every game.
Right, and there's some logic to this that goes even deeper because Madden pitched him until the wheels fell off because he
Yeah.
knew that they weren't going to re-sign him. So he didn't really care. I mean, the Cubs never even tried to make an attempt to re-sign him. So they knew that they weren't going to keep him. They just used him as a rental. And they gave up a really good prospect to get him. But that's another conversation for another time because Gleyber Torres just lit up the Arizona Fall League. I think he batted like 341.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So he absolutely lit up the Arizona Fall League. And that's who they gave up to rent Aroldis Chapman to win a World Series.
It's
And in the end,
it's
he
a
almost
price-
cost them the World Series.
Yeah.
So
And you know what? It's a price to pay. It's a heavy price, but it's a good price because now you've got your first World Series in over 100 years. You broke the curse. I think
Right.
it was worth it.
Kenley Jansen got $80 million over 5.
I'm not sure how I
$18
feel
million
about
a
that.
season.
Because
Sorry, no, 17, somewhere in there.
something like that. But
Yeah.
Jansen's a good closer. He always has been. It's just I don't think
He's all right, but it's just
you don't
more
pay
to the
$80
point.
million for that.
It's more to the point of how the Dodgers just throw money at everybody.
Yeah.
They give Justin Turner 4 years, $62 million. I mean, they'll pay average players to play there just
I'll be
because
honest
they
with
look
you.
better in their system.
I think he might actually end up being worth that contract.
Justin Turner's
Justin
not very
Turner.
good. He's a
He
glorified
was so
utility
good this
player.
year.
Glorified utility player playing in a
Didn't
really
he hit
good
like
lineup.
20 plus home runs hit over 300?
You got to remember that the lineup he plays in, though, where he's surrounded by, Adrian Gonzalez and Joe Peterson and Corey Seager and all these great young hitters and old established veterans that can all hit the ball. It's, he's getting plenty of pitches to hit.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's going to stop. I just think that when you look at his relative value, he's not worth what they offered him. Because before he got there, he was just a utility player for the Mets.
Fair enough.
And the Mets, as we know, could use offense. Mets have 5 ace pitchers, but nothing else.
Right.
There's not one player on that team. I mean,
Outside of
Cespedes, again,
Cespedes.
arguable, whether you think he's good or not. But, that's the kind of money that's getting handed out to players when the Dodgers are giving Justin Turner $62 million.
Sets the
Mellinson
market.
got $62 million over 4 from the Giants too. So it's not just an isolated case. I mean, people are overpaying relief pitchers. Closers are the new fad right now in MLB, where you have to have a great closer or you can't win, which I don't understand the logic of. If your starter can go 7 innings, then you don't really need to worry about the closer as much.
Makes me wonder why isn't like an Andrew Miller screaming for that kind of money right now?
Is Andrew Miller even a free agent right now?
I think he's with Cleveland for
He's
one
with
more
Cleveland,
year,
I think, for one more season. But
like at a discounted price. Pretty.
well, that's because
discounted.
that contract he signed with the Yankees was so favorable when he signed there. But
Well, it's because before coming to the Yankees, he was crap.
right. One last topic I want to talk about with MLB, and me and you talked about this earlier last week before the podcast. MLB Hall of Fame ballots. A ballot was released last week where and I forgot to write down the name of the person who wrote the ballot, but the person who had the ballot only had 2 names out of the possible 10, because you can vote for 10 players every year. And it's been the argument of a lot of very famous baseball writers like Jason Stark that if you're not voting for all 10 names, then you're not really, why are you voting at this point? I mean, that's always been my argument, that if you're not going to vote for 10 names, then your vote should be taken away.
That's really hard. That's really harsh to say. It's because it's
I looked at the ballot.
I looked
There
at
are
the
10
list.
names worth voting in this year.
maybe
I mean, first-timers, I think Chipper Jones is a first-timer this year.
he was on that list. I didn't see him there.
He was at the bottom during on the first-timers part of the list.
Okay.
I think, I don't know, I have
He'd
to look
be
again
worth
at the
it,
list.
absolutely.
But there's first-time names, and then there's names that are on the list that people won't vote for that they should, like Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, who are Hall of Fame players. No matter what you think about what they did later in their career, before they started using PEDs, they were already Hall of Fame players. Barry Bonds was already on track to be a Hall of Fame player before he started using. Roger Clemens was already on track to become a Hall of Fame player before he started using. These are guys that were elite talents, and you can't teach that level of talent.
Right.
It's unreal.
I've got opinions on that, but
Go right ahead.
No, please.
No, go ahead.
I personally think
We can extend to listen to what you have to say.
I think that sets an example, though, that if you use any kind of enhancement drugs during your career, it ruins everything.
It has to be relative to the era, too, though, because they played in an era where a lot of people were using, and a lot of people that used weren't even half as good as they were, and even when they used, weren't still as good as they were. You're talking about guys that probably the only thing that they really got out of using PEDs was that it lengthened their career by another 4 years, because both of them played into their 40s. So that's not normal. You're not supposed to be able to play baseball as a living for that long and be as good as they were, where Barry Bonds was still winning MVPs and Clemens was still winning 20 games in a season. You shouldn't be able to do that when you're in your 40s.
I think Jamie Moyer won 16 games for us at one point.
Well, Jamie Moyer was a different case
45.
because he's relying. Junk ballers can go like R.A. Dickey into their 40s and still make money because that pitch is still so effective, a knuckleball.
Yeah.
You just can't hit it. And Jamie Moyer's stuff was so off speed that you go from seeing 93-mile-an-hour starters one day into the next day you have to play Jamie Moyer, and he's coming at you with a left-handed socket, and he's throwing junk balls at you. It's hard to track. So I think he was a different case, but I think when you look at like Clemens and Andy Pettitte and guys like that, it lengthened their careers by using PEDs, but it didn't make them better because they were already fucking really good.
Yeah, but like...
And it's relative to the era.
Yeah, but like they played better later into their career.
I think arguably
with that help.
With Barry Bonds, all it changed is it made him more of a power hitter, which obviously that's the natural thing that you go when you think steroids.
If you're chasing the home run record, yes,
power hitter. But Barry Bonds was already hitting, like when he was with the Pirates early in his career, he was already hitting 30, 40 home runs a season and stealing 30, 40 bases. He was just such a great natural talent. And again, if he wasn't such a dick to the press, and this Clemens was that way too, he was a dick to the press, and the press is who votes for who goes in the Hall of Fame, Baseball Writers Association. So if you're a dick and you also did steroids, you're probably going to have a harder time getting in because you have two things going against you. Whereas Curt Schilling, argument there, whether he's a Hall of Fame pitcher or not, but his stats say that he is. He has over 3,000 Ks. He's one of the best postseason pitchers of all time, but he's a fucking lunatic.
Does that even begin to describe that man?
He's a nut job. So, I mean, he got fired from ESPN for criticizing, what was it, softball?
Yeah, something like that.
So, yeah.
He hosts a political radio show.
And now he's doing a political radio show. He's just a nut job.
That's wonderful.
He's a right-wing lunatic, and that's going to keep him out of the Hall of Fame, even though his stats say that he should be there. So, when you're dealing with guys like that just won't get voted in, they should be voted in. And that doesn't happen because guys aren't enforced to vote 10 names. If it was enforced that you have to vote 10 names, some of these guys that are sitting in, like Tim Raines in his 9th year, where he's still only sitting at like 60.
I feel like he should have been in a long time ago.
He's sitting at 68% in his 9th year.
Long time ago.
And you need 75% to get voted in. If you're not voted in after 10 years, you're gone. You get dropped off the list. So a guy like that who should be in already isn't in because they're not enforced to vote 10 names.
I think
this year he might.
It's a very strange system. And Jason Stark has been very outspoken about making people vote for 10 names and increasing the list to 12 so you can vote 12 in every year, and about lengthening the cycle from 10 years to 15.
And I think that's fair.
There wouldn't be a backlog of this much talent if they would just vote 10 names every year.
Mm-hmm. But so
you get backlogged on talent where there's guys like Schilling and Mike Messina, who probably still a Hall of Fame pitcher too. Yeah. Didn't play long enough. He only got to about 200, I think.
230 wins.
230 wins, yeah. But he would have if he kept playing. He retired early. He retired at like 36. He could have played another 4 years on the Yankees and made the wins to get in.
Yeah.
As a 300-win pitcher. And he probably would have been the last 300-win pitcher. I mean, right now it's Tom Glavine. But he would have been the last one. So there's guys like that should be in, that are in their 5th year and are not going to make it because they're not enforcing the 10-person rule.
Right. But then if you go through that list and you see the people who are now first year eligible.
We talked about that too, that there's some that they add on that list. You're like, what the hell are you thinking? Casey Blake should be on this list? Why is he on here?
Freddie, the frequent injury player Sanchez is on that list. Freddie Sanchez, of all people.
I think, this year's a tough year too.
Carlos Guillen.
I think Vlad Guerrero is eligible this year, so he's going to get in.
He should
probably on his
definitely
first
get
year.
in.
Yeah, so I mean, that's what happens. Edgar Martinez is still waiting.
The only
to get
reason he's not in because he was a
DH, but
Either
he should still be in.
He should be in because he played well.
So maybe an argument for another day, or when we have people on, we can ask their opinions on it too.
You know what? Let me ask you,
because I'm very firmly in the corner of enforcing this to make 10 votes for each person.
Let me ask you this then: if it's taken so long for Edgar Martinez to just get in, when David Ortiz becomes eligible, do you think David Ortiz gets in first or Edgar Martinez?
Fucking A right, he does. But I'm a Red Sox fan, so I might be a little bit biased there.
But bias aside, logically, shouldn't Edgar Martinez get in first? Because that would pave the way for David Ortiz to get in his first year.
He should have been in already.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking up the actual Hall of Fame ballot this year, so I can just throw some names out there.
I was trying to copy off the link you put
just to perfectly wrap this situation up. Here are some of the names on the list and how long they've been on the list. Jeff Bagwell.
Should have been
still sitting at 71%. It is 7th year of eligibility.
Should be in already.
Tim Raines, 10th year of eligibility, 69% right now. Trevor Hoffman, the best closer of all time, besides Mariano Rivera, but arguably back and forth.
Yeah.
2nd year of eligibility, only got 67% of the vote last year. Should have already been in. Should have been a first ballot guy.
I think the other reason is because he didn't win.
Sure.
He played on.
He did have the unfortune of
teams.
playing for San Diego for so long,
Yeah.
obviously. But Kurt Schilling, Clemens, Barry Bonds, all in their 5th year, all under 50%. Edgar Martinez, 43% in his 8th year. He's not going to make the Hall of Fame.
No.
And he should. Mike Mussina in his 4th. First ballot guys this year, Ivan Rodriguez.
He
definitely has to go in. Manny Ramirez is going to go in.
Absolutely.
Vlad Guerrero is going to go in. Yeah. So when names like that are on there, Jorge Posada, this is his first year. And if you don't make, I think, what is it? If you don't get at least 5%, you're dropped after the first year.
Wow.
So that's why it's really important, I think, that 10 names are enforced for everybody. You're not going to get everybody to agree on 10 names. It's never going to happen. So you're still going to see guys that should make it in the first year that don't. But you're at least going to see guys that deserve to be in the Hall of Fame actually get in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Gotten off on such a tangent about this. This should be its own episode.
I knew that this was going to be a heated discussion, so I shouldn't have saved it for the end. But I just feel so firmly about it that I didn't want to put it off for another week.
But the thing is, like,
or two.
NFL reigns over all. That's why we got to start with the NFL.
Well, of course. And it's also football season.
Yeah.
So not really any options there. So that's it. First episode of Deep Sports in the books. I don't know how people are going to like it or not like it, but I don't know.
There might be a couple laughs here
If
and
you
there.
like what I do on some of the other endeavors I've been on, like Deep Six Podcast or Rob Dimension's Shock and Wrestling Podcast, you know what you're going to get from me. I say really dumb things, and sometimes I have to be fact-checked. And, I have a very unique sense of humor, I guess, is a good way of putting it. So you already know what you're going to get. So I hope some people that, know me from other things join me along on the way. And I hope the Deep Six audience joins me along the way. And I hope, everybody promotes the show and, shares and follows and likes and comments and all that, happy horse shit.
Speaking of fact checking,
Yeah.
I just fact checked you for one of our previous questions here.
How dare you?
Carter Hart does play for the Everett Silvertips.
See, I knew that.
Western Hockey League. You're right. I'm wrong. You're always right.
So sometimes it's worth fact checking me, but I'm always right. So
Always.
Kyle, where can people find you online?
Look me up on Facebook.
Twitter handle?
No Twitter handle.
No
Oh my
Instagram?
What
No
a fail.
Instagram. I am strict Facebook.
Well, you can find me on Facebook at the Deep Six Podcast.
But don't look up Kyle Hahn. Look up my full name. Kyle Blake Hahn.
You can find me on Facebook with the Deep Six Podcast. Also on Instagram at the Matthew Barnes, Twitter at the Matt Barnes. But I'm all over the place. So join us next week when we go to another episode of the Deep Six Podcast. That'll be next Friday, right? We'll find some time to
Should be
record next
Friday.
week. And,
which should be a fun one because it'll be the last show of the year.
yeah, and it'll be holiday themed, and we'll talk about what Santa brought Dan.
Crates of anxiety.
Crates of Zoloft for Dan.
We'll probably do a year in review and that kind of a thing.
What did we do this year, Steve?
A whole lot of nothing. No, but yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, you're going to get that through the same feed that you're getting this through. So subscribe, like, share, comment, do all that fun stuff. Of course,
Yeah.
you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and Podbean.
Yes, sir.
And you can find links to all of those, plus all of our social media accounts over on deep6podcast.com, of course, spelled out.
Deep Six
Podcast.
EEP
Yeah.
6, the number 6
No, SIX. You
Deep
asshole.
Sacks podcast.
podcast, not
As long as you're not
forecast.
spelling Deep Sex Podcast, you should be fine.
You might find totally different results. I've never looked that up to see if it's a thing. I think I probably should.
Anyway,
See if we'll find any sports ball on that one.
Probably.
sports balls.
Sports Balls podcast. So yeah, this has been the first edition of Deep Sports. We're going to do this bi-weekly in between weeks of the Deep Six podcast. So look for us on Fridays where you normally would. Look for Deep Sports, clearly mentioned Deep Sports, so that if you're not into what we do on our nerd culture podcast, Deep Six, you don't have to listen to that. If you want to listen to, sports-oriented, Deep Sports. But I really want everybody to listen to both.
And if you're lucky enough, maybe we can eventually afford the option to have a separate stream just for the Deep Sports podcast if it's
Yes.
successful.
Well, let's see what happens with Deep Sports first, and if it's really successful, we'll do that. Next episode, we'll probably recap NFL. I have MMA talk with Kyle Aronofsky for the next episode, so he's going to be calling in after Ronda Rousey gets her ass kicked. So it's going to be a really great time. We've seen so much happen in the MMA landscape in the last week and a half, 2 weeks, and we'll have even more when Ronda Rousey fights Amanda Nunes, who you wouldn't even know was in the fight if you watch any of the promo videos. The champion's not even in the fight. It's just all Ronda Rousey coming back. But Kyle is going to have a lot more to say about that because I did talk to him this afternoon, and he was all wound up. He was like, yeah, I fucking want to be on your podcast. I got plenty to talk about. It was pretty much like that. So we'll talk to Kyle next episode and, babble more about NFL playoffs, and, I'll say more insane stuff. So it's going to be great.
So yeah, join us next time.
Join us next time.
Until
Peace out.
then,
Deep sports.
Deep Sports.
Deep.
we'll see you later.